First, we'll have a brief discussion talking about how I went about deciding what I was going to do conceptually, and then also deciding what kind of choices I would be making throughout the process. So to start out with, I decided I want a sign. Sign is a very important thing within gaming because a lot of times you find that signs are very good for establishing identity, establishing where you're at. It's like landmarks within games. A lot of sandbox games, you'll find that you'll travel through a lot of areas that will be very kind of monotonous, or not, maybe not so anything stand out so much. But then as soon as you see those landmarks that you recall from previous times you traveled through that area, or just general large scale things that really catch your eye, use those as kind of landmarks within the game, almost like you do within real life. You kind of remember those things, you remember those areas, you remember how to get to those areas, you remember those things based on those really big landmarks or things that stand out. So with that, I decided that the sign would be a sign that would be a little flashy, something really kind of over the top. But I wanted something that also was going to be retro. So I just wrote a few words down that really kind of spoke to me. Like, I like the idea of retro. I like the idea of something kind of colorful, something really kind of flashy. I liked some of the ideas of just like having like Vegas signs, or anything that just really just seemed like it could really catch the player's eye when they're traveling through an area, but also had a lot of visual interest. So with that, I did some quick searches for things like signs and things like that I really liked. A lot of these signs are just pictures that I've taken over the course of the years, but these are just pictures that really stood out to me, and just things that I liked about them, either specifically the shape with some of this like this, or just some of how the neon was formed, as well as some of the general shapes. I like the shape of the arrow here, as well as some of the rust you get around some of the letters and words. And then also just generally some of the color palette they have going on here. So I use this to kind of write down a few ideas, and I started collecting a lot of reference offline, anything I could from some of the period-based stuff from like the 1950s, 1960s, images of old signs. I looked at a lot of old Vegas signs. I also looked at a lot of games that I really liked, the visual style of how they went about creating the assets. When I find a lot of games that I like, I try to understand how they went about creating their visual style, and I usually use that to kind of help myself establish what I want to create visually for the player, to see whether going through the land seeing the landmark that I provided. So next with that, I'm by no means a 2D artist, so I did a couple quick sketches when I had the chance, when I was away from the computer, just to kind of establish some shapes, some general ideas, some flow, some things that really try to catch your eye without being over the top. As you see, I did some really over the top ideas to some things that are just really simple shapes, to understanding really what I'm trying to establish within this. And so I liked the idea of the rocket at first. I eventually moved on to kind of like the alien spaceship, based on the period, some imagery that I saw within the concept and the reference I saw. But overall, I just was trying to establish what I really wanted to see conceptually for myself, so I could understand at least a general workflow. And then from there, I moved on to when I had a computer in front of me. I did some quick Illustrator or Photoshop files, just to kind of get an ideas, check on some, like maybe some font ideas that I really liked, some color palette ideas, and not necessarily any of these made it to the exact final, but it helped me get to my general idea before I start blocking shapes out within Maya. Because if you go kind of straight into modeling, it can become very difficult sometimes, and you'll fight against yourself longer than if you just kind of established at least a few ideas leading up to the point of jumping into modeling and things like that. So I use this to kind of just at least get the general shapes and ideas that I wanted down for moving into modeling. And then I figured as I go along, when I'm looking at more reference and thinking about it more, I'm establishing the color palette. I'm writing things down that I really like. And generally, I just moved in after modeling, I just moved into texturing, and then understanding, using that concept that I gathered over the course of a couple of days that I've been thinking about it, to use that to texture as well. So next we'll be moving on to modeling, and we'll be talking about how I use this concept to establish the first shapes, and moving on from there.